Simple to plant, easy to eat, nutritious, familiar, and proven by centuries of use. These plants were never rare or fragile. They fed ordinary families and asked for very little in return. So why did modern farming get rid of them? This is not nostalgia. It's a quiet investigation. Stay until the end. One of these plants explains more about modern food than any yield chart ever could. Modern agriculture tells a simple story. Newer is better, bigger is smarter, and efficiency always wins. But history rarely works that way. Many food plants didn't disappear because they failed. They vanished because the rules changed. The system stopped rewarding reliability and began rewarding control. Crops that grew easily, fed people well, and tolerated mistakes slowly lost their place, not because they were inferior, but because they were inconvenient. For most of human history, food plants were chosen by families, not industries. What mattered was survival through bad seasons, poor soil, and human error. A plant that grew despite neglect was valuable. A plant that could be harvested gradually reduced risk. Taste mattered because people ate what they grew. Nutrition mattered because food was not optional. These priorities shaped agriculture long before machines entered the field. That balance shifted when farming became centralized. Fields grew larger, markets grew distant. Uniformity replaced adaptability. Crops were selected less for how they behaved in the ground and more for how they behaved after harvest. Storage life, transport durability, and mechanical compatibility became decisive traits. Plants that didn't conform were not debated or rejected openly. They were simply grown less, researched less, and eventually forgotten. The plants in this video share a quiet common trait. They reduce dependence. They don't demand perfect soil. They don't collapse after a missed watering. They don't require constant correction. In small gardens and traditional systems, those traits are strengths. In industrial systems built on inputs, schedules, and scale, they are liabilities. Independence does not integrate well into systems designed around control. The first plant is lupin. Long before it became ornamental, it was food. Grown across the Mediterranean and other regions, lupin tolerated poor soils and actively improved them by fixing nitrogen. Its seeds are rich in protein and sustained communities that lacked access to meat. Farmers valued lupin because it fed people and healed land at the same time, reducing the need for external inputs. Lupin was never difficult to grow. What limited it was uniformity. Different varieties behaved differently. Preparation required knowledge, not machinery. In an industrial context, that variability became a problem. Fertilizer-dependent crops replaced plants that produced fertility themselves. Lupin didn't disappear because it failed. It disappeared because it reduced dependence, and dependence became the foundation of modern agricultural economics. Amaranth tells a similar story from a different angle. It grows fast, tolerates heat and drought, and produces edible leaves and seeds. Historically, it was valued because it succeeded where other crops struggled. You didn't need precise spacing or perfect timing. Scatter seeds, and it grew. That flexibility once made it dependable. Later, it made it incompatible with systems that required predictability above all else. Amaranth does not respect straight rows or synchronized harvests. It grows when it wants, where it can. That behavior frustrates machines but benefits people. In traditional settings, staggered growth meant staggered food. In industrial systems, it meant inefficiency. Instead of adapting systems to resilient plants, agriculture replaced them with crops that obeyed schedules, even if those crops demanded more water, fertilizer, and care. Broad beans, also known as fava beans, once filled a similar role across Europe and parts of the Middle East. They are cold-tolerant, protein-rich, and easy to cultivate. Families relied on them because they matured gradually and could be harvested as needed. That gradualness reduced risk. For industrial harvesting, however, uneven maturation is a flaw, not a feature. As farming scaled up, crops that ripened all at once became preferable. Machines could harvest quickly. Supply chains could predict volumes. Broad beans didn't fit neatly into that logic. They fed people reliably but resisted synchronization. Over time, they were replaced by crops that served logistics better, even if those crops required more inputs and offered less resilience at the household level. The fourth plant is Jerusalem artichoke, a tuber native to North America that behaves more like a perennial than a crop. Once planted, it returns year after year with minimal effort. It tolerates cold, poor soil, and neglect better than most staples. You can eat it raw or cooked. For households, this reliability was invaluable. For industrial systems, its unpredictability and poor storability made it undesirable. Jerusalem artichoke produces abundantly, but not uniformly. Tubers vary in size, shape, and timing. That variability resists standard packaging and long-distance transport. The crop feeds people locally, but performs poorly in centralized supply chains. Modern farming prioritized crops that could sit in warehouses and survive shipping. A plant that prioritized feeding people over feeding logistics quietly lost institutional interest. The final plant is chard, often called perpetual spinach. Unlike modern spinach bred for single harvest cycles, chard grows continuously. You cut leaves and it grows back. It tolerates heat, cold, and poor soil. It offers steady nutrition with little planning. For home gardens, this is ideal. For industrial agriculture built around synchronized harvests, it complicates efficiency. Chard was never improved out of necessity. It already worked. That made it uninteresting to systems chasing optimization and novelty. As farming scaled up, plants that produced continuously were replaced by those that produced all at once. Uniformity simplified machinery and forecasting, even if it increased vulnerability. Chard remained reliable, but reliability without scalability no longer justified investment. What replaced these plants were not necessarily better foods, but better commodities. Crops like corn, soy, and modern wheat varieties offered predictability, standardization, and compatibility with machines. They rewarded inputs and scale. These plants, by contrast, rewarded patience and diversity. As incentives shifted, so did fields. Food production aligned with markets first and households second. This transition changed how success was measured. Yield per hectare replaced survival across seasons. Uniformity replaced tolerance. A crop that forgave mistakes lost value in a system that assumed constant correction. Over time, agriculture optimized for ideal conditions rather than real ones. Plants that functioned well under imperfect care became less visible, even as they remained practical. It is important to be precise. These plants are not perfect. Lupin requires proper preparation. Jerusalem artichoke can cause digestive discomfort. Amaranth can reseed aggressively. Broad beans mature unevenly. Chard bruises easily. But these are manageable traits. Historically, people handled them without difficulty. Their limitations never prevented them from feeding communities for centuries. What truly disappeared was not the plants, but the knowledge and incentives surrounding them. Seed catalogs stopped highlighting them. Agricultural education narrowed its focus. Research funding moved towards scalable monocultures. Over time, absence created the illusion of inferiority. A plant grown less often appears less important, even when it continues to perform reliably wherever it is planted. Today, interest in these crops is returning quietly. Gardeners, small farmers, and communities rediscover them not as symbols, but as solutions to practical problems. They reduce failure. They spread harvests. They tolerate uncertainty. The traits that once made them inconvenient now address the weaknesses of uniform systems facing climate variability and rising input costs. The question is no longer why modern farming abandoned these plants, but why it hasn't replaced what they provided. Calories are abundant. Resilience is not. These crops offered a margin for error that modern systems removed. That margin mattered, especially for ordinary people growing food under ordinary conditions, not under ideal assumptions. What makes these plants relevant today is not fear of collapse, but everyday frustration. Many gardeners struggle with crops that demand perfect timing, constant inputs, and ideal soil. Failure feels personal. These 5 plants reduce that pressure. They succeed under imperfect care. They tolerate mistakes. In a world where fewer people grow food professionally, that forgiveness is not a weakness. It is a design advantage. Small gardens expose flaws that industrial fields can hide. When a crop fails in a backyard, there is no buffer, no surplus field, no insurance. These plants were shaped in contexts where failure meant hunger, not profit loss. Their resilience reflects that origin. They do not maximize output under perfect conditions. They minimize loss under real ones. Taste also matters more than modern agriculture admits. Many industrial crops are bred for appearance and transport, not flavor. These plants were selected by people who ate what they grew. If a plant tasted bad, it disappeared quickly. Lupin, fava beans, amaranth leaves, chard, and Jerusalem artichoke earned their place repeatedly because people enjoyed them. Flavor was survival. Calling these crops forgotten is misleading. They never vanished completely. They survived in family gardens, traditional dishes, and regional cuisines. What disappeared was institutional support. Research funding, seed promotion, and education moved away. Without reinforcement, knowledge thinned. Silence replaced practice. Over time, absence was mistaken for irrelevance. Modern agriculture favors specialization. One crop, one function, one outcome. These plants resist that logic. Amaranth feeds through leaves and seeds. Lupin feeds soil and people. Chard provides continuous harvest. Jerusalem artichoke offers perennial reliability. Broad beans fix nitrogen and feed families. Multifunction plants complicate systems built around single metrics. There is no single crop that can replace what was lost. That expectation itself reflects industrial thinking. Resilience comes from diversity, not optimization. These 5 plants matter because they represent a different philosophy, one that values redundancy, tolerance, and adaptability. They are not solutions by themselves. They are reminders of how solutions used to be designed. Reintroducing these plants does not require rejecting modern tools. It requires rethinking priorities. Gardens and small farms can blend knowledge from both worlds. Modern irrigation, simple tools, and local seed saving work well with resilient crops. Progress does not disappear when independence returns. Balance improves when control loosens. Many people who grow these plants today report the same pattern: fewer total failures, more usable harvests, less stress. Food production becomes predictable again, not because yields are extreme, but because results are consistent. In uncertain climates and busy lives, consistency often matters more than peak performance. These crops also change how people relate to food. Continuous harvests discourage hoarding and waste. Perennial returns reduce urgency. Gradual maturation spreads effort. Food becomes part of routine, not a seasonal gamble. That rhythm once defined agriculture. It faded when food became abstracted into units and transactions. Industrial farming did not eliminate these plants intentionally. It outgrew them. Scale demanded predictability. Predictability demanded uniformity. Uniformity demanded control. Each step made sense within the system. But systems reflect choices, and choices can be revisited. Understanding why these plants were displaced allows those choices to be examined, not repeated blindly. The danger is not modern farming itself, but exclusivity. When one model dominates, alternatives disappear. Diversity in crops protects against uncertainty in conditions. Diversity in systems protects against uncertainty in incentives. These plants survived because they fit human reality. Their disappearance narrowed options at the exact moment complexity increased. Climate variability exposes the limits of uniformity. Crops that require precise conditions struggle as patterns shift. Plants that tolerate variation gain value. These 5 plants were shaped by inconsistent climates, poor soils, and irregular care. They are not optimized for averages. They are optimized for fluctuation. Growing these plants today is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of practicality. Seeds are accessible, techniques are simple, knowledge persists. What is missing is attention. Once attention returns, these crops stop looking strange. They start looking obvious. Their absence becomes the anomaly. Food systems rarely fail all at once. They erode through dependency. Inputs increase, margins shrink, flexibility disappears. These plants once buffered that erosion. They reduced reliance on timing, chemicals, and precision. Losing them increased vulnerability slowly, quietly, and unevenly. Recovery follows the same pattern. Not every garden needs all 5 plants. The lesson is not substitution, but inclusion. Each plant adds tolerance. Each reduces risk. Together, they represent a mindset that values reliability over perfection. That mindset does not conflict with progress. It complements it by restoring forgotten strengths. Modern farming excels at producing volume. It struggles with margin for error. Households need the opposite. These plants were designed at the household level. They assumed limited tools, imperfect knowledge, and unpredictable seasons. Those assumptions are returning, not because society regressed, but because complexity outpaced control. When food works only under ideal conditions, it becomes fragile. When it works under ordinary conditions, it becomes dependable. These 5 plants lean toward dependability. That made them unremarkable in good years and invaluable in bad ones. Systems that prioritize good years often forget bad ones until it's too late. Relearning these crops does not mean abandoning innovation. It means broadening definitions of success. Yield is one metric. Stability is another. Independence is another. Food that asks little gives much in return. That exchange once defined agriculture before it became an industry. Modern farming didn't kill these plants because they were weak. It replaced them because they were independent. Simple to plant. Easy to eat. Reliable without constant intervention. That independence no longer fit a system built around control and scale. Remembering these plants isn't about the past. It's about restoring options we quietly lost.